How would you like it if you had to pay an additional 10% on top of everything that you purchased? And what about an additional 10% tax on top of all the items and services you bought? Well, that's already happening today. You can disagree all you want. You could say, I won't vote for that. But the inflationary policy is already in place. You're paying for it today. You don't see it because inflation is mysterious, but it's there. In today's video, I'm going to explain what's going on right now, how this is impacting you, your retirement, your social security, your pensions, and of course, what's happening to individuals right now as it stands. Let's begin. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. First things first, you could see, as I've shown you data after data, it comes back again. Data shows credit card debt is on the rise. A March study found that credit card debt increased by $85 billion during the fourth quarter of 2022. That is the highest quarterly increase ever recorded. So more people now are using their credit cards. And again, more stats that I've shown you in the past, guess what? Coming up today. Look at it. Research has shown that more consumers making more than $100,000 annually say they are living paycheck to paycheck. I've always been saving. I've always been more aggressive. More recently, I'm not in the tech field, I'm seeing these massive layoffs. It's a very scary thing when people in your close circle have lost their jobs. We're going to look at the layoffs today. I'll show you that in a few minutes from now. But here we have it. No matter what people are making, 100 grand, I've seen the examples of $250,000, depends on where you live. But people are living paycheck to paycheck and they're using their credit card more than ever before. That's 20% interest. How do you like to pay 20% on top of everything that you're already paying? I mean, that is unbelievable. It compounds. You got to stay away from credit card debt at all costs. Okay, very important stuff. But what's going on here in the UK first? I'm going to show you that. Take a look. If you can believe it or not, the UK CPI remains above 10%. It's 10.1%. You'll see here both headline and core inflation moderated. So those have come down. In this article out of the Financial Times, they break that down. Double-digit UK inflation offers little hope for the end to the cost of living crisis. 10.1 in March, higher than expected, increased the chance of more Bank of England tightening. So while the central banks like the Federal Reserve, Bank of Canada, others have basically said, yeah, that's probably enough. We're not going to do it anymore. It looks like Europe is in a different set of circumstances. And so they're trying to actively slow down everything, slow down the purchases, get people to stay home, don't spend their money because they need everything to go down slower. And that, of course, impacts the economy. If people aren't spending, well, the economy slows down. That's kind of the goal, but they're trying to balance that out. Of course, we know at the end of the day, they're trying to achieve something else. And I'd love to really highlight those things in videos regularly, but I know that when we talk about the deeper levels, some people, they don't want to hear about that. And so I've shied away from it. I've talked about it, but don't like to mention it all the time. Anyway, the point is that if we are willing to accept the information as it is, you're getting a 10% tax on top of everything you purchase. Yes, this is UK, but that's the official stats. So, it's probably, in some cases, much more than 10%. Your expenses, just think of all the services that you pay for. Maybe you go to get your hair cut, maybe you go to get the oil change, maybe, like whatever it is. Isn't it more than 10% over the last year? Or even let's just take it, come on, like from 2019. Aren't you paying considerably more for just about everything back from 2019? Now, what was that big change? What happened from, let's say, the end of 2019 or the beginning of 2020? Actually, probably, let's say, before the third quarter, fourth quarter of 2019. Something very important happened there, the expansion of the balance sheet. And then that led into 2020 where they went even wilder. And then up until today, we have seen what they have tried to do is increase interest rates. At the same time, they're printing money. I mean, it's wild why they would do this. We're going to read about this in the history books, that's for sure. And so all of these inflationary policies ultimately get the circumstance we are in today. That's what I'm saying. So how do you like it? Please let me know in the comments. Do you enjoy paying 10% on top of everything that you do? You've got VAT, you've got your sales taxes, you've got, depending on where you live, there's all forms of additional taxation. And that's just unbelievable because we work so hard. They take away from our income right away, especially if you're an employee. They take it away and then they come through and they are trying to tax you again and again and again and again all the way down the line. And even when you go off onto greener pastures, they want to take from you again. This is an unbelievable circumstance, but I digress. Bank of America reassures investors about $99 billion of unrealized bond losses. These things are still happening today, and you'll see right here, again, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corp, FDIC, has begun selling bonds it inherited from SVB and Signature Bank to recoup the losses of rescuing the failed bank's depositors. So here they go. They're trying to sell this garbage and people will buy it because, hey, if the government's going to guarantee it, why not? Per the median price guidance from the 6 dealers who have published price talks so far, the government should expect to get around 86 cents on the dollar for the entire portfolio. Wow, great stuff. You're going to pay for the rest of it. Good stuff. Veteran investor David Roche says a credit crunch is coming for small town America. And the point that he makes here is a little late because if you're watching the Money GPS, you already know. So what happened during these circumstances? We found something out. Now, you had the small banks that were really dealing with some serious problems. Small banks, okay? Because then the small banks, people led out onto the big banks, okay? So all of that money ran away into the big banks. JP Morgan was a winner, Bank of America, all these other companies. But the small banks oftentimes are doing a lot of the lending. It depends on the stats and what we're looking at exactly, but half of the lending is coming from the small banks. So what does that tell you? You've got a very big problem that is not resolved, and it won't be resolved. And so the chance of a crisis is still very high. Now, whenever there is a crisis, we know exactly what the response will be. More inflation. Do you see what I'm getting at here? They created the inflation, and we can go back 2008, we can go back, 1971, we can go back 1913, whatever you want to do, but let's just take it from 2019, starting from September 17th, 2019, up until today. Now, they've created this problem, and now we are seeing the effects of it here and now. I think it is important that we highlight it really carefully and look at it in depth. That's what we'll do right here with the layoffs. BuzzFeed News is shutting down and Vice World News could be next. Okay, that's one. They're getting rid of a lot of people, laying off 15% of its staff. They've got very few remaining. Bed Bath & Beyond preparing for bankruptcy, filing within days. This stock was doing really well during that bankruptcy. It was absolutely strange. Disney planning more layoffs, aims to slash another 7,000 jobs. This company just keeps shrinking. Whatever policies they're trying to do, I would probably reverse them, okay? Meta prepares more layoffs across Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, okay? And this, a comprehensive list of 2023 tech layoffs. You're looking at Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and so on. They give you some examples right here. January, almost 85,000 employees laid off. February, 36,000. March, 37,000. All in the tech industry. And of course, they hired a lot of people leading up into that. But it shows us that these numbers have become significant for this industry. But what? Why? What happened here? Well, as soon as credit tightens, as soon as it's more difficult to put our money in to any of these investments, and why is that the case? Because it's more expensive, because everything is running on debt. Well, then there's less borrowing that takes place. There's less investing that takes place. You have a general tightening. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say here. And that happens through these cycles. So they increase interest rates, and all of this happened. The tech industry is one that feels it very hard, and it feels it first. And so that's why we saw this. The tech companies are probably not going to go anywhere. Like Amazon's still going to be there in a couple of years, and so is Apple and all these other companies. But it doesn't mean that the companies can't feel the burn of what happens during this part of the cycle. It's a tightening cycle. Now they're going to loosen. They've already done so somewhat by expanding their balance sheet dramatically, and it's got to be targeted in the right way and so on. We'll see what happens, but it's certainly a tightening phase of the cycle. They're going to reduce that. They're going to cut interest rates. They're going to actually create an inflationary crisis. They want that. But that's where we are at. Tech feels it first and feels it hard. No doubt about that. And then let me show you this. Millions of older Americans are nearing retirement without a penny in savings. Okay, so I think you get my point right here as we come full circle. If you ask Americans how much they'll need for a comfortable retirement, they'll throw out a big number, 1.25 million to be exact. But in reality, most workers are far from reaching that goal. About 27% of people who are 59 or over have no retirement savings. Unbelievable. Okay, and look at this. The trust fund for Social Security is going to be depleted in 2033 if everything goes according to plan. There could be something that disrupts it along the way. Huge recession, massive, just downward spiral, anything. So what should that tell you? For a lot of people right now today, we are experiencing higher inflation. Do you expect there to be more money printing? Answer that question. If the answer is yes, there's going to be more inflation. Simple matter of fact, right? Okay, we've got that. We've established that. What's the next thing we got to do? Well, if there's going to be more inflation, I've got to do a few things. I've got to cut my expenses, or I've got to increase my income. I've talked about this before. If you were there for Financial Education Week, I believe I brought it up there as well. Now, you got to increase income. How can we do that? Well, by the way, let me just mention really quickly, there's only so much of our expenses that we can cut. All right, we can stop going to get our coffee, our $9 Frappa Mocha Latte at Starbucks, okay? And we can, choose to have coffee at home. We can not have the bottled water. We can bring our own water, okay? I have the Berkey filter, and then I would actually carry that bottle in a clean canteen. It's called stainless steel. I would bring that with me, okay? Because it's purely for the health factor, but I didn't ever need to buy a bottle of water. Anyway, that's just one thing. And so you can only cut your expenses so far. The second thing is increasing income. Now, what can we do? If we work a 9-to-5 job, we have measurable goals. No matter what industry you work for, you always have measurable goals. Now, can you write those goals out? What is it? Okay, I have to call, 50 people a day, or take 50 phone calls a day, or I've got to speak to 100 customers a day. Whatever that is, I'm sure somewhere there's roughly a number that you need to get. You don't even need to be at a sales position. Well, what if you could not only meet those goals, but you can exceed them by a particular amount, largely done by some improvement in efficiency? And if you work this strategy out and say, look, boss, if I can do this and create a system in which I'm able to increase my performance by, let's just say 25%, 30%, well then, would you be willing to give me X amount of dollars or a bonus or whatever? And they'd be crazy not to do so. Because if you establish a new system that makes things run more efficiently, any good boss would be so happy that you've done this, because then they can implement it on other people and so on. And you're the one who spearheaded that. Make sure at the same time, second point, is that your superior knows what you're doing. Don't just sit back, sit idle, stay quiet. You got to over communicate in a lot of cases. And they love that. Okay, I'm telling you right now, especially in the big establishments, okay? That's really good stuff. So those are 2 tips for you right now. Of course, in business, I can get into that on an entire video, but you got to learn about the pillars of prosperity, and that's what's next. So right here on the screen, pillars of prosperity, the money GPS. I want you to check that out. I'm going to see you over there. Take care.